Now, as you may know, Alpha Anywhere has some great tools built in for handling data offline when your device doesn't have a cell signal or a Wi-Fi signal. But those features mostly dealt with just data in the form of text. But recently, capability has been expanded to handle pictures, and Dion is going to show you how that works today. But before we get started, two quick things you should know. First of all, this session is being recorded, and if you would like a copy of the recording, please send an email to guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com. It's probably also going to be posted on our events page, where we post quite a few of these weekly webinars, and you can find the events page at alphasoftware.com/events. Second thing is, please ask questions. We encourage you to do so. Just do that by typing your questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar interface. So let's begin. Hello, Dion. Are you there?
Doing great. Good to hear from you, Dave. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I just went
Yay.
ahead and made you the presenter, so I'll let you know when we can see your screen.
Yeah, there we go.
Great.
Let me know.
Okay, it's coming through. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. We have a real fun discussion. We're going to jump into the weeds today and really get into it from a standpoint. Basically, I want to walk you through the incredible demonstration application that Selwyn has created and posted. I want to kind of go over some of the details so you can easily replicate it yourself and really kind of talk about some of the nuances of the underlying structure of how it was built. And as usual in each week, I like to talk a little bit about, what I think this application, to a large degree, kind of helps solidify the story that Alpha Anywhere is that right tool. The tool that will allow you to build very sophisticated web and mobile disconnected applications, but do so in a very simple and straightforward manner, meaning you don't have to learn a bunch of code and do other things, and you can build very powerful applications from that. And yet, whenever you get into that ability to add something new or different, you're always going to have that capability built into the system. So we're going to go ahead. The first part of it is I'm going to walk you through the demonstration and also walk you through the code and how it's structured and answer your questions there. You'll notice in your GoToMeeting panel that there's a questions area. Please ask questions. That's why we're here. Go ahead and put those in there, and Dave will be able to work with me to go through and make sure we answer those questions to the best of our abilities. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump out of the presentation area and get set up here. Bear with me. Dave, coming through loud and clear okay?
Yes, you sure are.
Great. Oh, good. There's some questions already. That's there. Okay, so I'm going back into the alpha development environment, and in here I basically have a single application or a single UX application for the inventory app demo. Before I dive into it, I want you to understand that this content is available online at the, and I'll post it in the chat area of our system right here. Basically, the components and everything else I'm doing today is available in the Alpha 5 release notes for version 12, Alpha Anywhere. It's located on that page, and there's actually subsequent videos that Selwyn have put together along with the components that go into it. And it's under image capture using the camera in a list detail view, disconnected applications, which is a very, very sexy way to put this, very literal, very engineering. Instead of like awesome image disconnected capture 5,000, which is kind of where the marketing team would probably like to put in that text. So go ahead and for reference, save you a lot of time to be able to download the components and pieces there. So I'm going to go back into my development environment, and I really highly encourage you, after you've seen this, is to go through those videos, because I basically did it to learn this. I'm going to shortcut some stuff to make sure you don't run into any roadblocks, but go through those and it'll walk you through a really good way of putting this together, some of the nuances, and I'm going to capture the highlights today. So the first thing that I want you to understand before you get into this is that there's a little bit of setup. When you download and look at the application, there's a little piece of text up here, and this is a comment line in the UX. I don't know if you were aware, but in your UX components, you can click this little button right here that's kind of like 2 slashes, and it will allow you to insert, here is is a comment that you can actually insert into your environment. And the cool thing about that is that if you have a fairly complex UX, you can put these comments in there to kind of help to it. But there's one in here that says before, and I'll go ahead and open this up and show it to you, is before this demo component, you must create a table in your SQL database. So you have to create this table in your database, and I'll go ahead and show you how I did it, and then that may help you in terms of your process there. But for this to work, you have to set up this table so that you have a table with 4 columns, an ID, which is an integer, a description, which is a character, a location, which is a character, and an image, which is a blob field. In the MySQL world, it is long bob there. And actually what this is for people who don't do a lot of things in SQL, this is a SQL command you can run that will actually drop it, will actually create the table. If it exists, it deletes it and then recreates it. So Selwyn's added that, but that's a tricky part, because if you're going to run this component, excuse me, it depends on having that table exist. So in my case, just to let you know how I did it, is I'm using MySQL as my database. I use a tool called, it's called Navicat, and it makes it really easy. And what I basically did is I created a new database called disk_image. I then copied this little code that had that basically the create the table, and ran that, and it basically created in my database a single table. And if I go ahead and design that table, you'll see it only has 4 columns here: ID, description, location, image. And I have not replicated this in Access, but I'm sure you could do the same thing just using Access. What you want to do is make sure you create a table called inventory table with the integer, character, and blob, because this image is going to hold the image file, which is a blob type there. So I used MySQL. The nice thing is built into the development systems. Selwyn gave me, or puts in there, the command to create that, but it's very important that you set up your environment correctly before you get into it, otherwise it's not going to work and you'll get frustrated. So now, once I got that information and I created my database, I went into my Web Projects control panel, and then I went to Tools, Alpha DAO connection strings, and I created a connection to that database, and I called that connection inventory database, all one word. And the reason I do that is that the component is already set up to look for a database connection called inventory database. So in, again, my case, I built a connection string to MySQL, but this could be a connection to Access, it could be a connection to SQL Server, whatever your environment it is. But remember, and very important so you don't get frustrated, is make sure you build the database in the table, and then make sure you've set up your connection string to that, and you're ready to go and off to the races, and you're in good shape there. So that's kind of a little bit of a sort of housekeeping plumbing that you need to do up front. Then we can go actually into the demonstration and show you how this component is built. So again, if you have any questions on that, make sure to add it to our SQL or into our GoToWebinar question area. And with that, we've got our deal there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my inventory app demo, and I'm going to go ahead and run it. And in my case, first I'm going to run it in working preview, actually live preview, and then I'm going to run it in remote test and kind of talk a little bit about how we would actually test this control out. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit more about the details of how this was built and the key secret sauce to make it work. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into live preview, and I'm going to do a full preview, so it's running in the browser here. And you'll notice that I'm using a iPhone kind of representation. I could use an iPad or a Galaxy or thing like that. And it's a very straightforward interface. Is basically you have on the interface, you have a list of images, and I've already started playing with this one. So if I refresh it, it's going to refresh the data. I've got a item, so if I click on an item, it's going to take me into the detail record, and I can swipe up and down. If I need to add an item, I simply click the plus record. Now notice I'm running here on the desktop, so I can do description, test, item, location, office, and if I click the capture image, it actually brings up my browser because I'm running basically in the browser there. So it's a very straightforward application there, but that's not very exciting because it's running on my desktop. So let's go back into design and let me go ahead and run this in remote test. And I don't know if people have had that example, but built into Alpha is the ability for you to run this UX component right from the development machine on your mobile device. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into remote test. I'm going to go to full preview. So it's preparing it for. I'm given a sort of a dialog that says, well, how do you want to kind of figure out how to remote test this? You can send an email with the URL, but what I use is display a QR code with the URL for the test page. And then I click OK, and what it does is basically it's now using my development server as a server, and I've got in my hand a iPhone. So I'm going to go ahead and show my iPhone on my screen right here, and let's see if this works. This is kind of doing a lot of different stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and go in there and give that a try. So there. Okay, so I go to this, I have a tool on here, and I'll go here and we'll see if this works. Ready? I'm setting it up, bear with me. There we go, bear with me. And I'm trying to find it. Where is it? Oh, there it is. It's coming up. Bear with me, everybody. And I'll go into the smaller there. Okay. So you're now seeing my iPhone live. Dave, just to make sure, is that coming through okay?
Yep, it sure is. Yes.
Okay, great. And for anybody who's curious, Hair Salon 2 is not an app I developed, but I highly recommend it if you have a small 5-year-old girl, which I do. Trust me, hours of fun and enjoyment. So that's a free ad for Hair Salon 2. But they have to borrow my phone every once in a while. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on QR Reader. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to, now that I've got my QR reader here, I can now go onto my system and I'm zapping my QR code. So bear with me. I just zapped it with my phone. And now what I'm doing is opening it up in Safari. Sorry, I'm getting to know this one. So bear with me there. Okay. And so what is happening right now is with that QR code, I have zapped and my phone is talking through my Wi-Fi connection here to my laptop. So this is the way I can really tell if my application is working fine, is I can actually literally use my my iPhone to test again the server. So what it's doing is my phone in the browser is calling the server there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on the mouse, and you'll see that I'm able to sit there. It's very smooth. It looks beautiful there. I can go back. I'm going to add a new item here. Okay, so I'm going to call this disk, and then I'm going to put it in the house. So I'm literally in real time using my phone, and I'm going to click capture image, and then it's going to ask me, do I want to take a photo or my photo library? In my case, I'm going to take a photo. It launches the photo. That's my little desktop media disk. I click go. I say use photo, so it's using the internal camera, and you'll now notice on my iPhone I have, let's fix that. People can misconstrue that, so we're not going to allow that to happen. Yeah, I know. This is rated G, so we're going to stick to that. So now I've got that photo in there, and if I click save down below, it has now saved it. Now, very important. You'll notice on my phone, what I'm seeing on my phone and what you're seeing there is that it's got the little blue caret right here in the corner. That means I have captured that photo, but that photo is only existing on my phone. It's not on my server, which in this case is my laptop. So watch what happens. I'm going to go ahead. In the right-hand corner, you're going to see it's kind of like a circular thing. I'm going to click that, and what's going to happen is you'll notice now that the little caret went away, and I have now synchronized from my disconnected mobile phone to the server. And in fact, I can go in here, go into my working preview, and look what happens. Now I'm running this locally on my machine here. It's pulling up that from the database. And if I go into my database, go into my inventory table, you'll notice I have a new thing in my uh, uh, database running on my server, disk, location house, and that's the blob. And in fact, I can go ahead and look at it, and I wonder if this will display it as a image or not. I always wonder on that. There's a way you can look at it. Let's see. Anyway, so the bottom line on that is just real quick to show you that indeed it works. I am running on my mobile device, my phone against my here. I have the ability to capture images very quickly. So test. And it's running at almost native speeds here. So it literally feels like a native app on it. I'm going to take a photo of, this is a little Lego heart that my girl gave me here. So I'm going to take that photo there. I use that photo. I save it. So you'll notice it has the blue caret there. And I hit synchronize. It's now on the server. And if you'll notice, it's in the database. And if I recite this, it is running on my web browser here. So incredibly powerful. I mean, that's a monitor. In fact, one of the number one request was this capability. So I hope everybody now understands how this application works. And trust me, by downloading this and updating it, you can write this application. You can have this application running in your environment in a matter of about 30 minutes at most. And now if I wanted to, I could publish this to my production server so long as I have that database up on the server, and I could literally have an online image capture application done within a matter of an hour or so. So pretty powerful from there. Okay, so with that in mind, what I'd like to do now is first make sure everybody understands that. If there's any questions on that, Dave, if you can review the questions there. And now I'm going to kind of dive into the actual control and show you how it was being, or how it got developed. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this. Dave, do you have any questions on
We do have questions,
to where
but
we're at so far?
I think we will hold them until you show the second part, and then we will go through them. So.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody's with me here, and I'm not losing people any there. Again, just real quick, first make sure you create your database and your database called inventory database, and make sure you have your table, inventory table. Second, make sure you go to Web Projects Control Panel, Tools, Alpha DAO connection strings. Make sure you have a connection to your database there, and you're good to go, and you're ready to go ahead and start using it. And again, this works right out of the box, so you don't have to actually recreate this on your own. So you can get it working and make sure it's working. And then actually Selwyn in his videos will actually show you how to build this step by step. But I'm going to go ahead just for today's purposes is kind of highlight some of the key aspects of how this works, so it kind of gives you a jump on that process of how it goes. And obviously any questions you have we can do there. So I am in the development environment. I am in the UX Builder. The UX Builder I have my list of controls on the left, and some of the folks in the crowd probably are familiar with this, but for new people, I kind of want to walk through it. So I have a list of my different types of controls. In the middle, I have the quote-unquote layout of my application, and I'll walk you through that in a few moments. And on the right-hand side, I've got properties. So if I select a control like a button, here is all the information on how it goes. So the way this is working is first, we're using a panel layout, and that panel layout is left to right. And then we also have in here a panel list, and Selwyn goes into more detail on it, but it's a special top to bottom type there. It allows the behavior to work really cleanly on your mobile device, whether you're in vertical or horizontal mode. And actually, let me show you that. One other element real quick, if you don't mind me showing you that real quick. I wanted to just kind of give people an idea. Let's see, here we go. I'm going to bring up the BeerServer again. And what I want to show you is when I'm in this mode vertical right here, when I select mouse, you'll notice that you have kind of a vertical representation. If I turn my machine sideways and let me go ahead and show you this. You'll notice that it's laying it out nicely. It's consuming the whole screen there. And then when I select an item in there, you'll see that it's laying it out properly there. So it's there. Let's see what happened here. So it's handling what kind of direction I'm in terms of vertical or horizontal, in terms of the display of the device in there. And that's where these panel layouts will handle that for you. So first, on our first panel, you'll notice the most important thing we have is a panel header. That is where we have our buttons. So when we're in our working preview, the panel header is up here, this gray area. So you have the refresh button, and that will requery the database. If you're disconnected, it will actually hide that. But if you refresh the data and you're connected, it will actually store all this data locally so you can disconnect and continue to edit this application. You also have the plus button, which is enter a new record, and then synchronize, which is then do the synchronization to the back end. So for instance, when I click on mouse and I say mouse 1, 2, 3 and say save, it actually hasn't been persisted back to the database. I click synchronize data, and then it does that persistence. So that's in the panel header. And you'll notice in here, you have our refresh button data, our new record, and our synchronize there. And it's all held within the panel header. And that's the thing at top, and it always stays up at top. Now, the heart of it and the heart of the system is the list, and it's called list inventory. And that is where that list does two things, and this is very critical for you to understand. It's showing you the data, but more importantly is what the list control does now is it actually manages your offline data. So think of it as like a control on steroids, is that the list not only does the representation, but also very powerfully, it actually manages your data in an offline manner in JSON, and it handles that. And the new addition was this ability to handle that there. So we have the list inventory, and again, if I'm in my working preview, you will see this is my list right here with my 3 elements to it right there. Now, behind the scenes is it's got the JSON data, so it's holding all this data. So if I were to disconnect and turn off my connection to the server, it would still be able to show me and edit those items that are in there. Now, you'll notice when I select an item, it brings up a new panel with the detail of the record. So if I go back here, you'll notice I have another panel card here called panel_detail. So your first panel holds the list and the buttons up top. Your second panel card is handling the actual detail, and the panel layout is handling these panel cards and showing which ones are there. So in my second panel card, and let me go ahead and show you what it looks like when we're running it, you have your header up here with the back button and the delete record button. You have the actual data in here, and then you have a footer down here with save and reset. So let me go back into the design. I'm on panel card number 2, which is the detail, and you'll notice I have a panel header, and on there we have our back button and our delete record. So that kind of gray area up top, this panel header is very powerful because it will always have that at the top. You can then put what you want below it, but that will always be at the top. And similarly, we have a panel footer that's at the bottom of this panel card that has your save and reset buttons. So if I go back into my working preview, I go into here, we have our panel header up top and our panel footer down below right here, and our content in the middle. And the neat thing is, I can't show it here. Actually, I am, but if I can sit here and move back and forth, and you'll notice that the panel header and panel footers do not change because it's basically, those are fixed at the top and bottom of my page. And if I go to a different platform, check this out, if I go to iPad, you'll notice something. The panel header and footers are there, but the layout has changed here. And that's the trick of the panel list control. And I won't go into that today, but what it allows you to do is the panel cards and panel concept, it's very powerful because you can tell it to react differently depending on if you're on a phone. Let's say you're on a phone vertical here, or if you're on a iPad, it's going to lay things out differently because you have that extra real estate. Instead of swiping back and forth between the panels, it's actually showing on there. And actually, Selwyn does a great job in his video of showing and explaining how that works there. So our structure in the heart of it is our list on the first panel, and then on the second panel, we have that. Now, on the second panel card, the panel detail, we have in here a control group. And these are essentially our detail view of that record. So when we click on a record and go in, the ID, the description, the location, and the image, and the capture image button is the heart of your detail view. So on the second panel card, when I'm on that second panel card, let me go to my second panel card here, you'll see I've got ID, description, location, and capture image. So all of these controls are in this control group here. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and show you under the thing how all the pieces are tied together. So that's the structure of how the interface is laid out. But let's talk a little bit more now in terms of how does the list inventory work. So I go into list inventory here, and when I double click on it, it's bringing up my list builder here. So let me go ahead and walk you through the list inventory. So the first thing we're saying is that we're connecting to a SQL backend, and that could be Access. So what we're doing is we're using our connection string, and that's why it's so important for you to have that set up, is because if that inventory database connection string is not set up, it won't work. It doesn't know how to talk to the database. But I'm using a custom SQL statement, and that SQL statement is basically selecting from the database the ID, the description, the location, and the image from our inventory table. And the primary key is ID, and the return value type is primary key. So for this list, it knows when you click on an item which ID you have there. Now, if we go into the fields area, so we've selected from where we want to get our data and the SQL select there. If I go into the fields, you'll notice that we have our different fields: ID, description, location, and image. And in ID is a numeric, description is a character, location is a character. Now this is very important, and this has got to be set for this to work. You'll notice here that image is B for binary or blob kind of image. And the two things you want to do, which is very, very important, one is you want to size the image to a certain size so that when it's representative, it looks nice in the list. But this is very critical. Embed images into HTML. This has to be checked. If that is not checked, then the offline ability to capture the image will not work. So super important is that when you set, anytime you're going to use offline image capture, one of your columns in your database is going to be a blob column, and it's going to be a binary. When you connect to that image right here, you have to go to the fields, select the image item, make sure the control type is set to image, and the embed images into HTML. Otherwise, the disconnected, if you're connected, it will work okay, but if you're disconnected, it will not work from that standpoint, which is very, very critical. And I'm going to come back and talk about this image capture and storage options in a few moments there. So we have our data source, we have our fields, we've set up our image properly to embed it in the HTML. Now I'm going to go to my list layout, and you'll notice it just looks like some text there. And if I preview the list, it shows you that you have basically a row. So let me walk you through this here. So the preview is on the right, and this is really powerful to be able to open up your list layout and have a preview working on the right here. So you'll notice that basically I have a sort of a row by row, which shows the ID, the description, the location, and then the image. So if I look in here, I basically have a table structure here, and I have my ID is on top of my description, is on top of my location. So that's why I see one there. And then you'll notice I have a div that over here that I have an image here. And remember, we have these predefined templates in the device to help you lay these out, so you don't have to learn this from scratch. But for instance, if I wanted to do something interesting, is like, for instance, that number 1 right there, I'm going to sit there and say ID there. So I'm just typing in some text right there. And when I preview the list, you'll notice that now I put that static text ID, and then it's filling in the control ID right there. So it's very easy for you to change your layouts and update it and make it look everything as easy as it goes there. So that's how we lay out the list layout there. So when I'm in my environment, the data source tells me where the data comes from. The fields tell me what the field types are, and remember, we have to embed the images in HTML. The list layout tells me how to lay out the list when it's presented to the user on that first panel card, so it looks nice with the text and with the image work there. Now, very important is that is for the display part, but what about this detail part where I'm actually doing the editing? Well, in that case, we go to the detail view part, and in here we say we have a detail view type of field map. The field map shows our list control columns, what comes back from the database, and our controls on the component. So I'm matching ID on the component to ID in the control, and I do that for each one of my 4 different data values there. Now what I'm doing is auto commit detail view on row select, so it's going to automatically commit that if I'm connected on that. And the rest is handled, and again in the video, this will all be pre-built for you from that standpoint because you use the quick setup genie there. Now the last thing that's really critical here in terms of our list is this, and that's the super magic. Basically the list component, if you don't click this, which is persist data to local storage, it is a connected list, meaning that it's going to attempt to connect to the database for any of its behaviors. But when you click this button, persist data to local storage, what will happen is now the list will automatically pull the data down for you and start managing it on your behalf in the local storage point right there, so locally. And that's what makes it a disconnected list. So the important things are, and I'm reiterating it just so because this screws up a lot of people, make sure you embed the images in the HTML, and in the persist data to local storage, make sure that's clicked, and boom, you now have a offline managed local storage list with image capability there. So we have our layout with our list on the first page. We have our second page, our second panel, which has the controls that we're actually doing the editing, and we have the list inventory there. Now, up to about 2 weeks ago, you could do all this here, but you could not persist the image data, or you could not sort of capture it in a disconnected value. So 2 things went on there. First thing is that they enhanced the list control to be able to manage that data, but also Alpha added a new active action JavaScript command that allows you to capture the image data. And so if you'll notice, let me go into my working preview. We've got our list control, and you notice we've got it laid out there. And then I can go here, and then I click this button here called Capture Image. And what it will allow me to do is then capture the data. And in my case, since I'm running on the desktop, it's bringing up a desktop browser for file browser. On the mobile device, it would actually bring up the take a picture or grab a picture out of your existing camera roll. So in my user interface, you'll notice we have on the detail page ID, description, location, image, but we have our button capture image. So if I go to that button and I click on the click event, you'll notice we have a new action JavaScript command called image capture for list detail view camera photo library. So before we always had a capture image button, but it had to be online. But this new one actually working in conjunction with the list. So when you do this and you add a new action, just look for image, And you'll notice we have a new one here called Image Capture for List Detail View Camera. Before we had this one, Image Capture Camera Photo Library, but this only works connected. This one added the ability to persist it, because this one, it would automatically write it immediately back to the database. This one writes it to the list, which then the list is responsible for writing it back to the database. So don't get those two confused right there. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this and show you what it looks like. So the first thing we're going to be asked is, okay, you want to do image capture on this device. It's asking me which control on my interface should I use. You could have 2 or 3 image controls, depending on what kind of application you're building. But in this case, we're connecting to image here. So let's click OK there. We want to use the HTML5 image capture method. And wait a second there. There are 2 other options. We're not going to go in that today. You have PhoneGap and PhoneGap Preferred. So if you are going to actually build this application to be deployed on a PhoneGap as an application, the PhoneGap and PhoneGap Preferred enable a whole bunch of new features that allow you to do stuff on the mobile, because it's going to use the PhoneGap camera library to help you do this. But what's nice too is that if those PhoneGap libraries are not enabled, it will drop back down to HTML5. So it's really handy there. But for the purposes of our demonstration here, we're using HTML5. So therefore, it's going to do everything using HTML5. And the beauty of that is that it works on all the different platforms: Android, iOS, website, everything you need to do there. Okay. You can create image thumbnails. So when you do the capture, you not only can capture the image, but also create a thumbnail, so you can automatically have thumbnails created, which is very nice, because then you could have a nice representation for your list. In this case, that's not enabled, but if you do, you can go in and make a thumbnail definition and off to the races there. You have the ability to resize the image. In this case, we have it set up where it will always resize the image, so we have a specific size. And it does a certain image compression. Again, when you're using PhoneGap, you have a lot more control over this. But that's nice because, if you're capturing 100 images out in the wild, that can add up very quickly. So you may want to go ahead, and if you don't need that high resolution image, you may be able to resize it and compress it so that you reduce the amount of data that you're handling, which will help in terms of performance and overall management of the application there. And if you want, you have the ability to do before and after JavaScript events. So it allows you to do some other cool things if you need to do it in that case. But in our case, no. So the important thing to realize on this is that we have in the inventory, we've set up so that it's able to do things or disconnected. In the actual detail area under button capture, we click here. We go into this new action JavaScript called image capture for list detail view, camera photo library, and then set up our parameters there. And then that works in conjunction with the list to capture the image either through the camera or grabbing it from the camera roll, and then storing it temporarily in the list inventory. And then the list is then responsible for connecting to the database and updating the database appropriately. So that's the heart of this. And again, when you go through, Selwyn has these videos walking through step-by-step how to build this, talks a little bit more about the panel list, how that works. But as you can see, there was no coding in this. Is basically I set up a list, I connected it to my database, I set a few parameters in terms of the field, that it's persisting data to local storage, and I laid out the list. I added a detail view and connected it to my files. And by the way, the list quick setup genie will do that for you automatically. So it will actually create your detail view, set things appropriately. You have to set a few more switches. And then super important is I added this button with capture image that had our new command in there that actually did all the magic of grabbing the image and storing it in the list control, and I'm off to the races there. So literally you could recreate this control in about a half hour once you kind of know how the pieces are, and this can form the basis for any kind of offline image capture that you might find. So that's kind of my sort of presented. We're at about 12:41 my time. I should say we're at 41 past the hour to be more radio-like. And I'm going to pull it, go ahead and send it back to Dave, and we can look at the questions and see if I've confused everybody incredibly or have done a little bit of work. It depends. We'll
All right.
see. All
Yeah.
right.
Let me see. So let me see. The first comment here is from Bill, who says, "I don't understand anything that you're saying. Can you repeat it from the beginning?" No, I'm messing with you, dude. There's that. I made up that question. We actually do have quite a
Okay,
few
okay,
actual
wow. I was like, well,
legitimate questions every once in a while. It's just a good idea.
Bill, I would like to
Russ,
tell you about Twin Peaks research.
yes. So what exactly? So one one great question is from Russ here, who says, "Listen, that's great, but I do audit and inspection apps. I might have to take 5 photos or more for a particular record. Like, let's say you're going into a insurance inspection or something like that. How would you make this work with multiple images per record? What would your thought be on that?
It depends. If you know you have a certain static number of images, your quick and dirty is just to add 5, 10 blob fields to your record.
Okay.
And then you would just you would duplicate this image, and then you would set it up so it captures the image to each of those images. If you're going to do something a little bit more sophisticated where you want to have a separate table,
Yeah, like a
what I
one
would
to
do,
many, I think
yeah, like a
is what I was putting
one-to-many,
it. Mhm.
then I would actually set up a separate panel. So I'd create a new panel called panel detail image, and then basically you can create where you create each image is actually being stored in one list. So you would have list inventory, and then you'd have list images. And the neat thing about lists is you can chain them together. So list inventory would be changed to list images. You would tie the first panel to list inventory for the metadata, and then you would tie the second one. You would take all this image and image capture, tie that to the second list, which is your images. And then the cool thing about that is that you could go ahead and add as many images to that second list. And then what's going to happen is when you say synchronize, it will synchronize both lists at one time to the back. And what's great is that it will maintain the relationship between the inventory item, in this case, and the list of images, because it will know the ID of that inventory item. So really you would use the same structure, but you would add a new list. You would go ahead and add a new panel, and you would tie that panel to the images list, and then you would use the same technique with image capture to create that application.
Okay. Another question a couple people had it is there a way to do resizing? In other words,
Um,
can I do thumbnails and things like that?
yes,
Okay.
that is correct. And the way you do that is when you click on the button image capture, two things. One is you can create the thumbnails by going here. So you say click here, then you do the thumbnail definition, and you can actually add multiple thumbnails. So you can say, okay, this thumbnail is 10% of the size. Oh, that's in percentage. Okay. Then I want to add a new thumbnail that's going to be, 30 pixels on both of them. And what it's going to do is for each one of these, it's going to create a second thumbnail image. And you'll notice you'll have to have a field and a target field in your interface. So I couldn't say image because that's my primary one, but maybe I have image underscore thumbnail 1, image underscore thumbnail 2. So that's how you would go ahead and create multiple images at one time. So therefore you don't have to do it from a post-processing, because it would literally take the image, save the primary one to your image field, and then save these secondary ones at whatever size you want to your second image field. So you would have to create multiple image fields, do this, and the cool thing about that is that the moment you do, you take that image, and then for your primary image, you can do some resizing, or you can say only if image exceeds a maximum size. So if it's, like a 10 megabyte image, you may say, I just don't need that much detail. I want to always have them be maybe 1 megabyte in size or something like that. So you have the ability to dynamically create thumbnails and at the same time resize your primary image within that control. And that's done within the Action JavaScript for image capture for list detail view camera photo library.
Cool. Actually, a couple people asked about this, and it had to do with setting up the database to make the component work. One person asked about access. He said, if I'm doing this in access, what kind of field do I need to set up? Would it be an Olay object, or would it be something else?
I'm going to have to get that answer back. And I apologize. I actually started with Access and I cheated and went to SQL because I had a script that auto created it for me. So I would have to find that out. And what we'll do is we'll get that and we'll post it with this video as to what maybe even I can create a sample Access database or something like that that will work. But let me check into that and we'll post it along with the video if that's okay.
Okay. Another question about database setup. Asks why you decided to use a long blob and not a binary when you were setting this up in MySQL.
Oh, because Selwyn told me to do it that way. So I'm not sure. I wonder. I could just let's see what the other one is.
Binary? Is that a choice?
Binary.
Yeah, there it is. Let's grab it.
Okay. Interesting.
Data too long.
Binary may not be large enough because it's saying data too long for column image at row 1. Since I already have images in here, it's trying to do that. So my guess is binary is too small.
Is binary like a logical? That isn't the one that isn't just a true or false. What is it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I definitely use long blob.
Long blob. All right.
And long blobs are dynamic, so you don't chew up a lot of space in your database until you actually start storing stuff. So it's pretty efficient.
Cool.
But I know long blog works, so highly recommend you use long blog.
Okay, great. Just a question about where we're going to post the video. It'll go to alphasoftware.com/events. That's where we keep most of our other webinar videos. You can find there. Not every single one is posted, but this one will be. The ones that are around a theme typically are the ones that are posted. Should give us about two days to get that up.
The ones where I really am bad, we don't post those. Just
yeah,
it's really bad. It's kind of like, well, that one goes in the archive.
We're judicious that way. Yeah. Details of the list. Okay, so we talked about one-to-many. Oh, is it possible to geocode the location info if the photo is taken without internet access offline?
And the answer is yes. What you can do is during the image capture, you can have geocode location data here. And when you do the capture, you can run a little piece of JavaScript that actually grabs that geocoding. I wonder if it's built into this control. Let me see here. Let me check here. Bear with me. I'm looking at something. I remember what you would do is on image capture, you could run a little JavaScript that grabs the geocoding data, and then or JavaScript to execute when the image is you can grab it, that data and run it there. So you can actually grab the geocoding data at the same time you capture the image, and then you would set up geocoding fields in your database to capture that latitude, longitude, or the location. So the answer is yes. It's not built into the command within here, and actually I'll go ahead and forward that as a feature request because I can imagine that most field applications want to grab that and add that as sort of if you have geocoding fields, it'd be nice to be able to just say go point to those fields in this little script and it will do it all for you. So I'll pass that along to the development team.
Here's one that has to do sort of with size of storage. For the offline storage, how much can you store? And that's without PhoneGap, and then we'll get to a PhoneGap related question on the same topic later. But just wondering if you know.
I hear different things on that, and that's again I think I'm going to have to talk to the team, the mobile guys. I think it's handled by the browsers, the amount the browser. So if you're running this in a browser, the browser gives each sort of quote unquote tab or running deal a certain amount of space. So it's really dependent there. And so I'm not sure the actual size on that. So when I get the answer on the access database, I'll get the answer on that. Now, when you go to PhoneGap, and if you deploy it as a PhoneGap, you open up an enormous amount more data storage because you can use the actual app can grab local storage, which is controlled by the machine, but it allows you to do more there. So, but let me find out what kind of potential local storage you get on a sort of deployed through a web browser.
And this now relates to back to PhoneGap. Has Alpha Anywhere had any enhancements made that allow you to use local storage through PhoneGap?
And the answer is yes. You basically have two things that the inherent things like the list automatically will take care of and or will connect to the local storage APIs within PhoneGap to use that local storage. But also you can through JavaScript use local storage yourself in your application. So you can literally, like for instance, instead of having to create a list, let's say you had a list of states. Well, you don't want to necessarily have to create a list on that. You can actually create a JavaScript piece of JavaScript that runs that will actually query the database, pull that data back, put it in a local storage text object, and then be able to reference that throughout your application. And that's all with standard JavaScript commands. And actually, I've got on my website, giantkillerrobot.com, how you do that. So, and I think it's also on the site for the annual developers conference too.
Okay. Another great question. When you download a component like the one that Selwyn had up on the site, the one that we're using today,
Yes.
where do you put it in your project?
Oh,
Like, where does it go on the
very
hard
good.
drive?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and show you. Actually, I'll show you that real quick. So
Okay.
I'm going to go to the Web Projects Control Panel. I'm going to go File, New Workspace. So I'm going to create, I usually, for these kind of things, I create a whole new workspace because I don't want to muddy up my other stuff yet. So I go New Workspace. I go to where I'm going to store my workspace. I'm going to go Delete Me Workspace. Now what I do is I create a folder. So before I create that workspace, I create a folder called Delete Me Workspace. And then I go into that folder and then I say Delete Me Workspace. Okay? And I'm going to save my changes real quick. So now I have an empty workspace here. Okay? Now, on my drive, if I look at my drive, I've got my Delete Me Workspace, which is basically the files here, and my web project's default web project. So I can do it one of two ways. Option one is I could go to my drive, I can go into my Delete Me, I can go find where I put my Delete Me Workspace, I can go into Delete Me Workspace.web projects, into default web project, and then copy the file right in there. Or I can go into my workspace and I can click up here, add file, find that file on my hard drive. So I'll go ahead and go into here where my other one is. And then I select A5 Web Components. And then I can click on that component wherever I downloaded it from the web, click Open, and it will now bring it into my project. So I did this through add file inside the system. If I'm doing it here, I would have just dragged that component into this folder, the default.web project folder, and it will just show up here. So you have one of two ways in which you can do that.
Great. Okay, we went over resizing. You'll get back to us about what kind of field we should use in Access.
Yep, and also the local storage potential using a web browser versus native.
Okay, great. And okay, let's see what else we've got here. Well, it looks like about it. Let me just take a look one more time, though.
Okay. Yeah, our timing seems pretty good for right now.
To many geolocation. Yeah, here's just a quick question about PhoneGap. You may or may not know this one, but it uses Node.js, and the question is, how can I tell what version of Alpha Anywhere PhoneGap is using versus what's the latest version of Node.js?
That's a really good question. I do know that when you click on the phone gap here, you can tell which version of PhoneGap you're using. So there's actually a PhoneGap version, so you can dictate which version you're using. So when you build, you can actually specify a specific version if you need to keep it in sync with something, with another library there. As far as Node.js, I don't have any experience on that, so I don't know. But when you're publishing it, you can find out which version you're going to do it through the when you click the PhoneGap button on the Web Projects panel and then select version, you can dictate which version you're going to connect to.
And then it appears, and you may, the person who asked this may need to qualify, but the question just a bit. If there is a difference well, first of all, in installed versions, the installed version is newer than the PhoneGap version, is there going to be a problem? In other words, can PhoneGap versions get out of sync between what you have on your hard drive and what you have in Alpha Anywhere? And I guess the follow-up question is, since PhoneGap also uses Node.js, can a mismatch in Node.js between PhoneGap and Alpha Anywhere create any issues that you know of?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't
Yeah.
run that in myself and just don't have enough familiarity with the Node.js environment. Um, uh,
Do you want to just go ahead and send that question in
okay.
to
Yeah, if you
guide?
could.
Yeah, if they could just send it to guides@alphasoftware.com, that would be okay. And then the other question is, how do you check to see what Node.js version is used by AA, by Alpha Anywhere?
Let's see, I think you can just, when it installs, I'm going to go to C. Let me see if I can answer that real quick. C, I go to Program Files, A5V12, and I don't know if it installs it here. There's Node Modules, bin. So there's probably a way to actually run a CMD, a command, but I just don't have that familiarity with Node.js.
Well, we'll get the
Uh,
answer when we post this video. We'll get the answer. We'll just write the answer into the
yeah,
comment section of the
yeah.
video.
My gut feel is you do like a CMD and then Node.js version, blah blah blah. And then it would tell you what current version is installed that is installed on your system. But I just don't know. I haven't worked with Node.js enough to really be an expert,
Okay.
or even to answer simple questions.
All right, great. And then I guess the last thing we should address for the comment section will be just about PhoneGap. The version that we showed in the conference, there was supposed to be an easier list genie. The question is, has that been implemented yet? We'll take a look and
And the
let you know.
answer is
Yeah.
yeah. It's basically a web component. You go to UX. So I'll create a new UX. And then I go to my controls. I add a list control. And I have, and I'm going to call this list. And you'll see we have our quick setup genie. And this literally will walk you through setting up the list, the detail view, the search part, and disconnected operation all within the genie. So literally it one-stop shopping as far as getting this up. And you can click Save Settings. So if you're going to recreate this list on other UXs, you can save and load those settings so you can quickly recreate things when you need them to be recreated.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our session. I'd like to thank everyone who participated. I'd like to thank you, Dion, for presenting. If you have questions other than the ones that we've just talked about now, which we're going to get the questions answered to, just send a question to guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com. I'll make sure it makes it off to the right person. And please give us a day or two, probably by Friday, to get this session up onto the events page. That's alphasoftware.com/events. Thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you at a future webinar. Take care, and goodbye.